afternoon, and welcome to CEPS Ideas Lab 2020. As you can imagine, the last days for us were rather stressful and rather hectic to decide whether we go ahead, yes or no. But we thought, given the circumstances, given that there is so much on the agenda for the EU authorities, not only the internal EU agenda, but also the broader external agenda, which we've seen over the last days, that we had to go ahead and we had to have this debate. Also, we got the reassurance from the authorities, the Belgian authorities, that there is no reason, let's say, to be worried. Let's say if we take the necessary precautions, which we've done and which we've informed you about, let's say, that we could do. So I thought this is an ideal moment to discuss over the next 2 days the first 100 days of the European Commission, the first 100 days of the new European Council President, and we're very happy to welcome him. Before I pass on the floor to our Chairman Joaquin Almunia, let me say you a few logistical things. As you have realized from looking at the program, and as you can imagine, our program was a bit a matter of a variable geometry over the last day to deal with cancellations, people which were not allowed any longer to come. So we had to adapt to that, which we did. A second thing is that, and we're very proud to say that also given the difficult circumstances over the last days, we still managed to maintain fully gender-balanced speaker panels. So that was an ambition which we wanted to have from the beginning. That all of the full set of speakers is almost 50% gender balanced. Of course, there may still be some panels which are male-dominated, but we have others which are fully female-dominated, so don't be surprised or don't be worried if there's only a male panel and you don't see a female. You go to the next panel, probably you'll see a full female panel as well. Also, we know this because it's important in the perspective of the International Women's Day, which is this Sunday. Third thing which I wanted to say, we wanted to thank all the sponsors which have made our Ideas Lab possible, like every year, but this year we were even more successful. We had a very large group of sponsors, 22 sponsors. I can name them very rapidly. We had the Andropov Foundation, Bertelsmann Foundation, the European Commission, the European Parliament, also the European Investment Bank. We had several private group sponsors like Google, CFA Institute, Deloitte, some other international institutions or international associations, like, for example, the CFA Institute, the EFTA Secretariat, the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. We had some other associations like the European Roundtable of Industrialists, some other corporates like ExxonMobil, McKinsey Global Institute, Microsoft, and Mistra, a Swedish foundation. And then another third group of sponsors, which were an Italian institute. Unfortunately, they couldn't be present today because of the circumstances. The Centro for the Study of the Federalism in Italy, City of London Corporation, Eurofound, Hans Seidel Stiftung, UK Mission to the EU, and also the US Mission to the EU. And finally, we had also two partners who were partnering with us, not sponsors, is the EUI of Florence and the ORF. Fourth logistical announcement, the debates will be, like always, under Chatham House rules. Please respect this. Chatham House rules meaning, let's say, that we don't take literal quotes. You can just reflect the thrust of the debate, but no literal quotes or no literal attributions to certain speakers. And also we have IDs boxes if you want to pass a message to us. Let's say you have a message for how we could organize this best next year. Please leave a message in the IDs box. I now pass the floor to our chairman, Joaquin Almunia. I think well known to all of you. Joaquin was many years in Brussels to introduce our opening speaker. Joaquin.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you very much, Karel, for giving me the floor for a few minutes. Thank you very much to all of you for attending this edition of Ideas Lab. Very special one because of the events, but also extremely important one because we are at the beginning of a new cycle, new leadership of the EU Commission, of the European Council, and other European institutions, such as the European Central Bank. We are facing new challenges, very important challenges, from the economic point of view, from the geopolitical point of view, from the social point of view, from the environmental point of view. We have listened to our new European authorities, the ambitious objectives and targets for the next years, for the years to come. We are anxious to see how these authorities will develop their ideas and their main objectives. And as CEPS, as always, we are absolutely ready to be useful with our contributions, doing research, analyzing policies, presenting ways out to tackle the challenges, the bottlenecks, the difficulties of our European life. We understand these difficulties, and we are committed to be useful in helping the authorities and helping the political authorities to overcome those barriers. We understand the very complex international environment, and we are ready to look in all the directions with all our fantastic research team, with our human resources that are extremely able to help, to give us ideas, and to provide way out of the difficulties. Thank you very much, President Michel, for being with us in your first years as President of the European Council. Thank you very much to contribute with your messages, with your ideas to our reflections and to enrich our debates. President Michel, for the first time, is participating in Ideas Lab. I hope will not be the last time you will be with us in the coming years. He will give us a speech, and after, Caroline and Cinzia will be with him in a dialogue until 2:30. Thank you very much to all of you. Again, President Michel, you have the floor.
Je souhaiterais commencer par remercier messieurs Lano et Almunia pour le chaleureux accueil qui m'est réservé, et vous dire d'emblée le plaisir particulier que j'ai à être cet après-midi présent avec vous. Je me réjouis que cette activité ait pu être maintenue, et comme chacun peut l'imaginer, j'ai une totale confiance dans les autorités belges lorsqu'elles apprécient ce genre de situation. Le CEPS réalise un travail formidable, un travail aussi surtout très utile pour tenter de régulièrement faire souffler un vent de renouveau sur le monde des idées et sur l'avenir du projet européen. Et je suis bien sûr heureux d'avoir cette occasion de partager avec vous quelques réflexions sur ce formidable projet européen qui nous rassemble. Le premier point que je veux affirmer avec vous, c'est cette conviction que l'Europe doit s'affirmer dans le concert international, s'affirmer davantage dans le concert mondial, et pour cela, on a besoin d'une Europe plus solide. Nous devons être forts à l'intérieur pour peser davantage à l'extérieur. Vous l'avez évoqué, après les élections européennes, l'entrée en fonction du nouveau leadership européen à la Commission européenne ainsi qu'au Conseil européen, nous démarrons un nouveau cycle démocratique, et c'est naturellement un moment propice pour tenter de définir, d'éclairer le chemin à suivre. Il importe, il est essentiel à mes yeux, que l'Europe s'efforce d'avoir les idées claires. Que voulons-nous aujourd'hui? Nous voulons une Europe qui tienne son rang dans le monde, aujourd'hui et demain, une Europe qui s'affirme comme acteur géopolitique, une Europe en première ligne contre le changement climatique, une Europe à la pointe de la transition numérique. Et sur tous ces fronts, il faut jamais le perdre de vue, nous devons prendre appui sur ce socle commun de valeurs fortes, extrêmement solides, qui en permanence doivent nous guider. C'est en quelque sorte la marque de fabrique européenne, la liberté et le respect de la dignité humaine, ainsi que la responsabilité à l'égard des générations qui nous suivent. Il ne s'agit donc pas, à mes yeux, de relever mécaniquement des défis les uns après les autres. Il s'agit de modeler un futur désirable pour tous, et c'est cette ambition commune qui doit inspirer nos choix au service de tous les citoyens européens. Et aujourd'hui, je voudrais, avec vous, profiter de cette tribune pour partager 3 messages. D'abord, le premier, nous avons et nous devons avoir un cap. Ce cap, il est géopolitique, il est climatique et il est digital. Ensuite, un euro attractif sur le plan international est un atout clé pour progresser vers nos objectifs. Enfin, pour un euro attractif, il faut une union économique et monétaire robuste. Ladies and gentlemen, our union must carve out its place in the world of tomorrow. And to do so, we have to address 3 critical challenges. First, our union must be a leader in the world to promote its values and interests. This will take time and hard work, and I believe the world needs a strong European voice and decisive European action. When I talk to European citizens, I hear always the same thing. They say, we want a strong, confident Europe, in words and also in action. Because whatever happens in the world has an impact on our union. Today we face strong headwinds. Global competition is back. That's not great news for the rules-based multilateral order. Our union runs the risk of being squeezed between great powers that use their economic tools to promote their foreign policy interests. And we must also prepare the ecological and the digital transitions. These 2 transitions are revolutionizing our societies and economies. The green transition is probably the great challenge of the 21st century, the challenge driving millions of young people onto the streets, a challenge all European countries have to support because we have no choice. It affects all our citizens equally. Ladies and gentlemen, the digital transition is happening now. Europe must be at the forefront to drive our economy and build a digital world in line with our European values. And we know the magnitude of these transitions. We must capitalize on their potential. That's why European leaders have committed a few weeks ago to very ambitious goals, like, for example, making Europe the first carbon-neutral continent in the world. We want our European priorities to inspire all our policies. This applies to the euro, this applies to the next European budget, and to our single market. Acting on our ambitions is how we defend our values. And because of these values, we are proud to be European. Ladies and gentlemen, the euro is a concrete symbol of success that our citizens carry in their pocket every day. 19 out of 27 member states, for exactly 343 million citizens. My children don't question payments in euro when we travel across the continent. To them, it comes naturally. But we forget that only a few years ago, we still had to exchange French to Belgian francs or Spanish pesetas to drachma. And even if the euro faced huge criticism at the start, I hear very few people are nostalgic about their national currencies. I believe the euro can definitely boost our strategic autonomy and help us achieve our political objectives. We live in an interconnected world, but sometimes this can limit our room for maneuver. Just one example, the global dominance of dollar allows US sanctions to reach beyond US borders. This affects European companies even when they trade legally with third countries. Sometimes we can disagree even with our closest ally. But a stronger international euro would certainly give us more latitude in our geopolitical decision-making. An attractive currency offers also a broader access to international financial markets, and this facilitates the funding of the massive investments needed for our digital and ecological transitions. These investments are the key to unlocking the full potential of the two transitions: sustainable development, quality jobs, and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, the main question is, how do we get the euro to play a more prominent role on an international stage? And this cannot simply be decreed. The decisive step is our collective European action to strengthen our economic and monetary union. And I am convinced that everything we do to strengthen the economic and monetary union will make the euro more attractive. We need to complete the initiatives we have already started, and we need to build new instruments that will prepare our EMU for tomorrow's challenges. And let's start with the initiatives already on the table. Our response to the economic and financial crisis has been more Europe and more competencies for our union. But to finalize our banking union, two reforms must still be completed. First, the authority that deals with failing banks must have all the financial means to carry out its duties. And second, we still need a European system to guarantee and protect our bank deposits. But that's not enough, in my opinion. The essential initiatives for tomorrow, a capital markets union and a better management of the euro area, are necessary. With a true capital markets union, our innovative SMEs could better fund their projects, our abundant savings could be better channeled into concrete green or digital investments. And we all see the advantages of capital flowing freely across borders, so we really need to breathe new life into this project. Ladies and gentlemen, steering our economy is a responsibility that cannot rest exclusively with the European Central Bank. European political leaders must strengthen the EMU so that monetary policy is not the only game in town. Economists have long called for a budget for the euro area, and the new BIC, the budgetary instrument for convergence and competitiveness currently taking shape, is a small step, but it's a step in the right direction. The euro is, in my opinion, the monetary expression of our shared destiny. And strengthening the EMU is a collective responsibility. One last word. We need to finance our common projects together. And we can do that by starting with pragmatic steps. For instance, the European Investment Bank could issue a large number of safe green bonds if it had additional capital to support the green and digital transitions. And this would also expand the pool of risk-free assets denominated in euro, which is currently too small. Ladies and gentlemen, today the world is more unsettled than ever. But the European Union has a clear compass to guide us through the storm. We are focused on climate change, succeeding in the digital age, and leading on the global stage. And I know these goals are ambitious, are very ambitious, but Europe has the talent, skills, and passion to make it happen, so we need the resources to back up these ambitions and make them a reality. If we want to promote our European values, if we want to lead on the big issues of the 21st century, we need a global currency that matches our global ambitions. I thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Also in the back? See, it's not that empty. Thank you for your passionate speech about Europe's role in the world. The challenges used to come, if I may paraphrase it, the challenges used to come more from the inside, and now Europe's challenges are coming mostly from the outside. So Europe must become a global actor, and it must also adapt the tools that it has developed or not so developed yet. Let me move to Cinzia Alcidi, acting director of CEPS, for a first reaction. Cinzia, the international role of the euro is not a new plan, huh? I remember reading already long ago that the French and the Italians, already in the 50s, had that role in mind. And I found a French politician, Jacques Rueff, who wrote in the 50s that Europe shall be made through the currency or shall not be made at all. Why has the euro never been really beefed up to international standards? And do you think it will be easy to do that now?
First of all, many thanks, Monsieur le Président. Many thanks, Caroline. I think this is an important question, also because the reasons behind the supremacy of the dollar at global level have been the object of a lot of research. And if we want to understand what are the reasons of the success of the dollars, I think it's useful to think of a metaphor which is sometimes used in economics, which says the reasons are either from Mars or from Mercury. So some of you may remember that Mars, it was the god of war in the ancient Rome, and Mercury was the god of commerce, of trade. So basically there are two main reasons why a currency is actually used in a very large way. Commercial reasons, so because of the trade linkages, because it can work as a safety place, because of the liquidity it can offer. The second reason is more associated to strategic and military power. And in fact, the success of the dollars after the Second World War in terms of global currency has been largely associated to the fact that the US was a global power. In this sense, the causality, if you want, goes on the other way around. It goes from being a global power to having a global currency. So does it mean that the euro has no chance? I don't think this is true, but we have to recognize that the euro is still a very young currency. As you said, we have some internal challenges and some completing the EMU in this sense, it will be very critical for playing such a role. If you allow me, I would like to put maybe two additional issues on the table which actually complement very much what you say. For the EU to become a global actor, what do we have other than the euro? I think this is a fair question that we need to ask ourselves. And I think we need to think of two additional aspects. One is trade. The EU is a set of group of trading nations. The trade has always been at the heart of the EU member states and is at the heart of the EU. It was basically the main engine of our integration. And it has also been the tool for basically relating to our neighbors and to our partners at global level. So trade in the traditional way to some extent is under threat. Can we still use trade as a main element to affirm the EU as an actor? I think that some changes are happening in this sense, but I think we need to explore to what extent trade can work as an engine for actorness of the EU in the global stage. And the second one, I think, is diplomacy. Diplomacy has always been the tool for interacting and building international relations. I know that you have been traveling a lot in the last days, so this is really part of what the EU needs to do. I think we need to consider that diplomacy needs to be modernized. That the priorities are changing. It's not only about security, it's not only about military, it's about technology, it's about digital, and it's about environment. So I think these are challenges and opportunities which should be considered all together with the international role of the euro.
Thank you. Mr. President, before opening the floor, I would like to ask you, you've been all over the place in this, during the last few days. You were in Greece, you were in Bulgaria, in Turkey as well. So you're really passionate in trying to give Europe that global role of a global actor. But how will you manage to do that when member states have all different opinions about migration, when some member states, also the one I know best, is not really willing to pay for a stronger role of Europe in the world? How are you going to do this?
Yeah, thank you. It's right that this European project is not easy, and it needs huge efforts and permanent efforts, and it needs permanent dialogue between the member states in order to try to coordinate, in order to try to take decisions together. But there is a first observation. I think it's possible at the international level to play a stronger role. Why? To promote our interests, to promote our values, and to defend our visions, to explain what we would like to reach at the international level. And I'm convinced at the international level that what we need to do is to use the different tools we have as European Union. You mentioned trade, we can add migration policy, we can add humanitarian support. We can also consider that the partnerships for the development in Africa is an important tool that we can also use. It's not only a question of voice that we would express at the external level, it's also how is it possible for us as European Union and with the member states to have a common position and to try to be more strategic at the international level. And my opinion is that the Eurozone, our economic power, is also a part of the tools we can use in order to promote more our values, to defend more our interests. It's easy to say that, but my observation is that in the past, we are very often seen as a global player, but not as a global player, and we have to change that. And we have indeed to have more influence, and to have an influence in the world, not in order to be aggressive, but in order to be more self-confident, to be more assertive. And I give some examples. This year, we will have two important summits, one with Africa and the other one with China. And I agree with you. I think it's a good occasion to identify what are the common priorities for the European Union in preparation of this summit. I would like to avoid to come with 100 priorities because each member state would consider that they have some priorities to defend. I would like to prepare politically, strategically this summit, and I think that our green agenda and the digital agenda have to be part of the priorities we have to put on the agenda when it comes to the relationship with China, with India, or with Africa, for example.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? I think it is we don't have a lot of time. Hands up, please. Can you here? There's a hand. The first hand up. He traveled all the way from Vienna to come here. Can you introduce yourself and ask your question?
Yes. My name is Paul Schmidt from the Austrian Society for European Politics. Mr. President, one concrete question to you. There's some reflection in some European governments on whether there could be a coalition of the willing to bring out minors out of the overcrowded Greek refugee camps. Do you think it is likely that we see such a coalition of the willing, and what are your views on this? Thank you.
My first priority will be always to try to get a united position in the European Council. But at the same time, it's right that in Greece, for example, at the moment, we are facing difficult challenges regarding this migration situation, and also with the presence of minors, especially on the Greek islands. And I confirm that we are looking with the Greek authorities if it's possible to strengthen the cooperation with the other member states in order to face this challenge and to try to bring the best possible answer on that.
Okay, I see two hands over there. You have to wave really very visibly because it's I'm blinded by the light a little bit. I'm seeing a hand there. Yes, the gentleman there.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a dynamic there that I hadn't seen. Yes.
Thank you very much. This is Nadine Idris from the Asser Institute. In a way, it's a follow-up question, because my question was also about what's happening at the Greek-Turkish border. You emphasized European values, and those are really very important. So I was wondering, what is your interpretation of what is the EU promoting and what is it sacrificing in terms of its values, in terms of its action or inaction at the EU, at the Greece-Turkey border?
I would say that I'm always in favor of the European way of protecting of the borders. I mean that we need to promote our values and to respect international law, and at the same time we need to protect the borders. It's not an easy task, and I understand very well how is it complex for Greece, for Bulgaria, for Cyprus at the moment to protect the national borders, which are also the European borders. And that's why when I visited these Greek borders, I was very clear, and I've expressed the importance for the European Union to continue to support without any ambiguity the human dignity, the human rights, and to be really committed to respect these strong international obligations. But on migration, what's the situation? Of course, we need, in my opinion, to develop a more common migration policy. And it's not easy, because we know that there are different opinions in the different European countries about what we need to do in order to give the best possible answer. It is the first point. But we need also, even with the best solution for a common migration policy, we need also to have some partnerships with third countries. It will be necessary also in the future to keep the possibility to have strong channel of cooperation, to have strong partnerships. Look, the return policy, for example, it's not possible to deliver on the return policy if we don't have concrete partnerships, concrete agreement with third countries. And that's why I think that the relationship with Africa is so important for the future of Europe, not only on migration, not only because of migration. I think with Africa, for example, that we need to develop a larger partnership. We need to speak about economic development, social issues. We need to speak about climate change. We need to speak about digital agenda in those African countries. And I think if we would do that, if we would support more the private sector in those countries with the expectations that the African countries, they have to develop a more business-friendly approach, to respect more the rule of law and this kind and these important principles. If we do that, I think it will be easier, to have stronger partnership also on migration with the African countries. Of course, in the next months, it will be an important and a difficult discussion again in the European Council. In principle, the European Commission has announced that in April they would make some proposals on migration, and we will start a political debate on migration. But the last days, what we did, I think, was necessary. Full support for the protection of the borders by Greece, and I insist we have to respect the international law, to respect the European values. No ambiguity for me, because it's an essential and a basic point for the European project, in my opinion.
So we need to get grip back on the situation. Yes, on the first row there.
Steven Lokmans here at CEPS. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for focusing on the international role of the euro, in particular to strengthen the strategic autonomy of the European Union, which has been sorely tested by its transatlantic partner, the US, especially over Iran. The EU, through a couple of its member states, has tried to build a special purpose vehicle to offset the secondary sanctions from the United States. It was unable to do that by employing the euro as a currency. Instead, it was a barter system which was created. Apart from the policy prescriptions you had on the EMU internally, what lessons do you think are to be learned from the Iran post-JCPOA withdrawal of the US and the special purpose vehicle in particular?
No, thank you for this question. And of course, we have a very strong alliance for many reasons, and also for historical reasons, with the United States. And in my opinion, the United States is a very, very strategic, important ally for the European Union. But I've observed the last years some different opinions between the European Union on the one hand and the United States on the other hand. Look, climate change, for example. Look, the difficulties regarding the trade policy. Look also some geopolitical issues. And I'm very, very respectful with our ally, but at the same time, I don't think that the destiny of the European Union is to become the junior partner of the United States. I think that we have to develop our own political agenda based on our strong values, and to try to act being more coherent in order to reach the goals we consider as essential for us. And I remember I was in the European Council when we faced the different approach, the different opinion in the United States after this JCPOA was concluded by the Obama administration. And I remember how it was painful for the European Union and for the European leaders to see that it was not possible for us to give the right answer just because of the dollar, and just because it was not possible for the European companies not to take into consideration the American decisions on this issue. And it shows that the difficult debate we have at the internal level, and also the different opinions between some countries which are more committed for solidarity, other more committed for responsibility when it comes to the EMU, it has an effect at the international level. But the effect at the international level is the fact at the geopolitical level it's not possible for us to be coherent. And that's why I know, of course, that this ambition, a stronger international role for Euro, is a difficult ambition. I know that we will face difficulties, we will face setbacks, but I'm convinced in the short term, in the mid-term, in the long term, it's really essential to work politically in order to make progress on that, because it's also part of the possibility or not for the European Union to play a stronger and a more positive role at the external level. And I'm, of course, very modest, but I think I'm really convinced that the world needs a stronger European Union because of our values, because we support the multilateral order, because we consider that the human dignity is so important, and it means that our positions at the external level, it will be influenced by our strong values. When it comes to climate change, for example, the fact that we will try in the next months, in the next years, to use more this ambition also at the diplomatic level, I think it's good, it's positive for the future of the world.
I see a hand there. Let me take 2 questions this time. Where? Was there? And one there. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your inspiring speech and your emphasis on the role that the EU should play with respect to values. Last week, the Norwegian authorities have suspended the financial support for the judicial cooperation with the Polish authorities in view of what is happening in the country. That cooperation has also been handicapped with respect to Hungary, given internal development in Hungary. Is the EU leadership with respect to values on the global stage increasingly handicapped by internal development at the level of member states? And if so, what can the EU institutions, including the European Council, do in order to remedy that unfortunate situation?
It's right that the rule of law is a sensitive and a difficult discussion in the European Council, but it's also essential as European Union to see how is it possible to make progress in the different member states. And that's why I'm really personally in favor of this initiative announced by the Commission. I think it would be good in the future to have a permanent monitoring in the 27 member states. What's the situation regarding the rule of law, and how is it possible in the 27 member states to make some progress? And there's a difficult political question with this regard, because for some member states, it's not acceptable that the Commission would have a leadership in the assessment. Is it compatible or not, this kind of situation with the rule of law. And for other member states, it's really essential that the Commission would play a central role in order to make this kind of progress. There's another debate that we need to decide in the next weeks or in the next months. In the framework of the next European budget, there is this proposal initiated by the Commission that I've kept in the proposal of Negobox that I put on the table a few weeks ago, in order to make a link between the budget, the next European budget, and the rule of law and the governance, the conditionality rule of law. I have the impression that for many member states it's possible to take steps in the right direction. We will see if we will reach an agreement in the next months in the global budgetary discussion, even if, of course, it's not a surprise. For some member states it's more difficult to take this step. But the fact that in this budgetary negotiation, for the first time, we consider this question is one of the most important political questions we have to decide, it's a step in the right direction. And I'm optimistic. I think it will be possible in the next months, regarding the next European budget, to have this step in order to have more conditionality, governance, rule of law, and the next European budget. Even I don't come too much into the details if there is some legal concern on that, because it's certain that it's not possible through the next European budget to reform the treaty. And in the treaty, you know, we have this Article 7, which organizes the possible sanctions if we face a problem with the rule of law.
A question there? Yes. The lady in red.
Hello, my name is Lina Vasiluta, and I'm research fellow here at CEPS. And I would like to ask you again, maybe coming back to rule of law and the situation in Greece, because what we witness at the Greek borders, or how Greek authorities are dealing with that, are not in line with international law and international humanitarian obligations, even mentioning alone suspension of the right to asylum, which is nowhere in Geneva Conventions. About which UNHCR also raised the issues. So my questions would be what kind of actions EU governments are taking about these kind of violations at the borders. We also witnessed overuse of violence Another question would be whether there has been a consideration of triggering a temporary protection directive, which is one of the best kept secrets of the European Union, the directive that was drafted in a follow-up of Balkan wars, and that is precisely designed for mass influx of displaced persons, and it requires only quality majority of votes at the Council of the EU. So question whether there has been a discussion about triggering this kind of directive in order to give temporary papers for people to come in the EU. And third questions, when the Commission is going to Idlib to stand in solidarity with the people in Syria. Thank you.
I think 2 questions is enough. But thanks for the 2 in any case.
About the first question, I confirm what I've already said. There are 2 priorities in parallel. We need to protect the European borders, and we need to respect the international law. And it's my message to the member states and also to the Greek Prime Minister about what you mentioned about the procedures. You probably know that the Greek government called Article 78. It means that it's possible for the European Union to deliver more financial support, more support in kind in order to protect the borders. What we did, it was announced by the President of the Commission 2 days ago, and we agreed with the Greek authorities that we would work together at the legal level in order to be certain that what would be decided, formally decided in Greece, will be compatible in accordance with the international law. It's very clear, I repeat, no ambiguity in my opinion on that. One word about Syria and Idlib, because it's indeed a serious situation. I was yesterday in Turkey at a long meeting with President Erdogan in order to discuss the migration situation, but also to discuss this situation in Syria. And I had just now, before I came for this conference with you, a call conference with President Putin. And this afternoon, they will meet together in order to try, I hope, to decide a sustainable ceasefire in Idlib, which is very important, I think. We have announced that we are ready to contribute more, with more support for the humanitarian aid, but it's very crucial, good example for the European Union to be more active in this kind of situation in order to defend our interests, to defend and to promote our values, human dignity, and to reach political agreement in order to avoid this tragedy and to stop with this tragedy. And we will follow the situation in the next days, in the next weeks. We will maintain the channel of dialogue also with countries with which we have different opinions. Because in my opinion, when we have difficulties with some countries, it's important to speak. It's important to be in dialogue. It's the first step and the necessary step in order to try to overcome the difficulties, to make some progress, and to defend again our interest, to promote again our values. I don't choose for the other option, which would be not to speak, to be out of the discussions. I don't think it's the right approach.
Okay, I think we're running out of time right now, but let me ask you one little yes or no question. Did you manage to clinch a new Turkey deal with President Erdogan? This was supposed to be on the euro, right?
I don't answer yes or no, okay. Because Europe is too complex, and yes or no is not the right way to progress at the European level.
Okay, fine, I accept that. With this, we've come to the end of this session. Thank you for a passionate speech. We've sort of traveled from the euro to the Greek islands and not even back again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cinzia, as well. And thank you for turning out in big numbers as well.
Hello. If I can make a quick announcement, let's say, so the sessions start at 2:30 of the different lab sessions. All the different lab sessions are taking place in the 12 different streams. And I think the President has set the tone very well for all the themes which we will be covering, from the euro, economic governance, to migration issues, to rule of law issues. They will all be covered. There is only one thing, the food for thought session between 6 and 7. There is one which is cancelled. The person from McKinsey was not allowed to come because of the corporate policy. The 3 others are taking place. So we now have at 2:30 the sessions we start, and then at 6 o'clock we have 3 food for thought. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. And also from my side, thank you to the President of the European Council for a very interesting speech. Thank you.